here to share with us the Tekia and to share with us in the Sheikh's Dars. The Sheikh has been speaking very strongly, as always, and has some great preparation has been made by the Sheikh to present Dars throughout the weekend, and we're looking forward to sharing this time together. I'm going to touch on a few things on the schedule for everybody, and also I want to preface this with we want to encourage everybody, including the speaker, to be on time to all events as much as you can. The Sheikh's really trying to encourage us to be timely, so we really want to try and do that. Sheikh's going to give Dars in a moment or two, and then we're going to have cleanup and then tea at the community center afterwards and discussion. And we would encourage you to bring your questions and contributions. The Sheikh will set the theme through his Dars and through his talks. So Fajr 6:11, please be on time, everyone. In the mosque, there's buffet breakfast for guests at 8:30. So please come here for that. And then there's going to be a service project, 2 service projects to choose from. Very exciting service projects to choose from. One is in the garden, working with our master gardener here, Mustafa, who's on his way back from picking up people at the airport. And then the other is going to be a construction project. We're going to be building a deck on the back of the store. And through these projects, we're going to talk a lot about and experience a lot about service and working together in community. So we have a sign-up sheet, and we want to encourage you to sign up for one of the 2 service projects. So I'll give it over to the Sheikh.
Well, my dears, this is a very big subject. And it's quite confusing sometimes to think of where to start. We start with the linguistics of Khidmat. We can start with the semiotics, in the sense of the patterns and forms that Allah has presented to us in order to serve others. We can begin with culture and history. It's much more than just the idea of serving. And we live in a world, a globalized society, where we used to be able to say the East is this way and the West is that way, and now we have to talk about Easternization and Westernization, or Orientalization or an Occidentalization, because so much of the world has been Westernized, and so many people try to Orientalize themselves but not give up anything that they already have. Most of the material on Sufism and other spiritual approaches that are available to us today, is either in the form of some kind of historical ancient encounter between Sufis and seekers or aspirants or others, or else some kind of Western evaluation of Sufis, or Orientalists' evaluation of Sufis or supposed Sufis in the East. And it's very difficult to find any account about how the Sufis of the East see the seekers of the West. How are we viewed? Those of us who have taken on or westernized people, even those of you from the East who have been westernized or raised in the West, and how are we viewed by others? And I think that maybe I'll start there because so much is going on in the world, and then we'll move into service. What are the strengths that we have as people who come to Islam and come to a obviously Oriental philosophy and point of view? Let us remember that's true of Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, as well as Islam. The only 2 exceptions that I know of are Scientology and Mormonism. And Mormonism finds its roots in the East too. So unless we're all ready to read Dianetics and become Scientologists, I think we can move on from that point of view. There must be a reason for that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us why the revelation's in Arabic. And there are many assumptions that one can make from that. One of the things that are peculiar of this, of what we're talking about, is, in the technical sense or characteristics, is that those of us in the West in general share, even though we may be from diverse backgrounds, we share a very common culture where we tend to be educated to, conditioned to approach and view things from outside of their original format, as well as trying to understand them from within. And that's because of a kind of conditioning, a type of conditioning that we get from the environment that we live in. We have this idea that we're a melting pot or a mixed salad or whatever we want to call it, and so that we can take whatever we want from whatever we want, and somehow it's going to make it into something better than anything else that's ever existed. It's a dangerous philosophy, actually, as we can see in the world today, and the assumption that we view things all in the same way. There is a generalized, westernized assumption that we view things in the same way. It's not that it's not true in the East, but in the East, it's more true in a strange way. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Here it's an assumption. There it's more reality. But I don't like to say here and there because, again, I want to go back to the fact that it's a mentality, it's an attitude. It's now no longer a geographic delineation. It's more a westernized or orientalized mentality. And so our contemporaries in the East world, in the Easternized world, seem to have a general response and reaction to those of us in the West who are even seekers. First of all, some of us may have recognized that we have to prove ourselves to them to be more Oriental than we are Occidental. And we also have a much more difficult time because we have to learn a new language, or we have to learn a new way of thinking, which has become so culturally imbued and so much of in the mother's milk, so to speak, of the people, that it's not even an assumption anymore. It's not even thought about in a conscious sense. And I'll be talking about consciousness over the weekend, inshallah. And so, there are the ideas that the typical seeker from the West is conditioned to outer things, names and symbols and labels and signs that make us impressed with form. We're impressed with the dress. We're impressed with the beard. We're impressed with the tasbih. We're impressed with things that are just natural to someone who when I remember when I was quite younger, I was shopping for a tasbih, and I was looking and looking and looking, and when the man who was selling to me, he says, "They're all used for the same thing. What are you looking for?" And it was true. At that time, I wasn't thinking about what it was being used for. I was thinking about how attractive it was, or which one I wanted. And not in a way as a very simplistic, but a very telling kind of mentality that carries through every aspect of our spiritual journey if we don't watch very carefully who we are and how we are. And so we find that many of the Westerners are attracted by the forms and the attitudes of the East, but the inner point of all of this is that what distinguishes a sincere and devoted and submitted seeker is that person is not trying to verify their existing point of view. More than less, from an Eastern perspective, we can see that a point of view is not something that one is trying to reinforce, but rather learning and deepening that knowledge is more important. Whatever kind of knowledge you're talking about, even you look at what it takes to be a calligrapher with an ijazat, for example, or a person who is an accepted scholar. The qualifications are quite different, and they are mixed with the attitude. They're mixed with the character of the individual. Westerners tend not to think about character. Character is something, well, it's over here, and then our study is this and our interest, because it's about what I'm interested in doing. And so that carries through when we get to the subject, many subjects, but this weekend's subject of service. It's what I'm doing. What am I doing? And you're doing phenomenally good things. Very important good things. But it's where this I is centered is different. And so we tend to be influenced by what corresponds to our pre-existing perspective, point of view. What is it I want to find, as long as it's in consonance and resonance with what I already believe and what I already want, or what I already have and I want to increase. And a gross generalization might be, and I underline it's a gross generalization, that an Easterner might want to know why something affects him or her more. You see, why am I having this experience? How is it coming to me? What is the purpose of it? And so when we see that people are crossing over from a westernized to an easternized point of view, that's one of the early signs of someone making some progress on the path. They want to understand how their nafs operates. They want to understand why I'm getting this response, why people think of me this way. Why do I have this question? Not having a question and prove to me that what you're saying is correct. Prove to me that this is a better way. So I'm not sitting here telling you the East is better than the West. No, quite the contrary. Everything has its value. But to understand, if you're going to try to understand the inner dimensions of spiritual growth and development, you have to ask yourself certain questions, like, why were all these religions coming from the East? It's a very simple question. I'm sure we've all asked it at some time. Who are these prophets? And what was their role, the Anbiya? How were they supported? What were the issues that they were dealing with? How are they so much different than our issues? But how did they deal with them? What is this dialogue that they had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some way or another? Why do we not see that that dialogue is prevalent in the West? Yes, I know I forgot the Native Americans, but I didn't forget them. They came from Kyrgyzstan and the steppes of Central Asia. So just to let you know, they just were here 12,000 years earlier. Just so I was picking up on somebody's thoughts about that. Anyway. And so the Sufi has to acknowledge certain things. That what we do is not some kind of sacramental process. It's spiritual in the sense only if what we're trying to do is refine our sight, our insight, and our awareness of a divine reality, a divine presence. It has nothing to do with us as the ego, me, I, nothing. Except that how it reflects it to us and how we overcome that pull from the ego. And so we're going to talk about service, we have to talk about ego also. Because many people do very good service for their own self-aggrandizement. There's no doubt about it. Many of the philanthropists, many of the seekers, maybe seekers, maybe people who serve others, they do it for some reward, some personal reward. It can be a religious or spiritual reward in their mind. It can be a social reward. It can be eventually some kind of a financial reward or recognition. But that's not the way of the Sufi. So the Sufi always has to ask himself or herself, why am I doing what I am doing? what does it really mean, fi sabilillah? What does that really, really require of me to give up in order to give out to others? What do I have to acknowledge? And one of the reasons why a lot of the sort of Eastern, what do I say it, mumbo jumbo that goes on, which has filtered into the Western ways, are held with such high esteem here, is because this tendency that we have to iconify, to make images, and to idealize form, to make things sacred we're always sacred, but they're not iconic images. And so what is seen as a wasila, as a means, to an Eastern seeker, what seems to be an instrument for growth, often becomes just a form that a westernized seeker uses to symbolize some state of achievement. It can be as simple as dress, like we dress. It can be knowledge, information, knowledge, scholarship, education. But it's how you look at it, not what it is. It's something inherently good in knowledge. And Prophet ﷺ said, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. It's inherently good. Truth is good. Transforming. But to the degree one can be transformed is to the degree one has to let go of who they think they are and what their point of view is. Even if your point of view is correct, let it be refined, let it be substantiated by an inner experience. Let it be your truth as well as the truth. So that the Quran is living inside of us. So the hadith are meaningful 1,435 years ago, 1,420 years ago, 1,400 years ago when things changed a lot, or 1,360 years ago, and yesterday and today. And so there's also a habit of the Westerner to embark on a spiritual search. This is a good habit. This is a good habit. But usually without any preparation, without any previous knowledge, and definitely without any question about, am I ready? Am I qualified? What would it take to qualify? Who will qualify me? How will I know I'm qualified? What self-examination, what muhasabah that I have to make before you even know the term muhasabah? How do I know that this is the thing that I should be doing? Or who do I trust that can tell me that my yearning or my interest or my tendency, whatever it may be, is sincere and real? But still in all, that lack of preparation and self-reflection is built on an assumption that one is ready and due, and whenever you feel like embarking, you embark, which is fine. However, at some point you have to ask those questions. At some point you have to understand, are you being prepared only to serve yourself and your own selfish interests and needs? Or are you really being prepared to empty yourself and to be a conduit for something much greater than yourself that will elevate that nafs amara, nafs through nafs lo'ama, nafs mulhama, nafs mutamana, nafs radia, etc. Even before you know those terms, long before you knew those terms, something is calling to you. You all have experienced that. Everybody, I think, in this room, perhaps not the children, but have experienced that. But there's a danger, and that is that somehow the Western mind is that there is that We have to somehow hold on to what we think are our principles and our practices and our opinions that we've acquired throughout our life, to whatever degree we've lived before we joined this path, and the assumption that one has aggregated the truth and nothing should be disconnected or discordant. In other words, if things are in accordance or concordance with what I already believe, then it must be good and it must be right. If it's resonating with what I already think is right, it must be the truth. We are not raised to question those things. We are not raised to say, well, maybe I have to look totally differently. Maybe everything I've learned up to this point has to be looked at and challenged. And see, what is the baggage? And what is the baggage that can be discarded? And what are the things that should be kept? What is at the core of the truth that I think is the truth? Or what I think is the truth? What's the core truth? Coherency is not the same as holding on to everything you know and trying to force all new knowledge into a pre-established pattern. It doesn't mean you don't gain knowledge. It doesn't mean that you don't gain information. It doesn't mean that you don't gain skill. And this is where all these problems come, because using the truth in a way that bends the truth or destroys the truth, as we see in the Middle East today, is done because the truth is the truth. Does that make sense? You don't use something that is not viable or true to prove something. You use something that is accepted as true. But then you bend the truth with it. You misuse it. Like I've said many times, no war is ever fought for the sake of destruction. No war is ever fought for the sake of, well, I'm not so sure now, but up until now, no war is ever fought in the name of evil. It's always in the name of good. Always. Why? Because inherently we know that that's the only way you can perform acts which would normally be antisocial acts. So don't think that service can't be performed for the wrong reasons. Because it can be, and it is. All you have to do, you have many examples in Egypt under the Muslim Brotherhood. When they built clinics and they built schools and all this stuff in order to win people over to a really, really deceptive philosophy. One that doesn't really represent Islamic values. And it's all over the world. We're Muslims, so I'm speaking about Islam. We can see it anywhere. So, things should be amalgamated when they're relevant. Things should be amalgamated. But when they are not relevant, they should be discarded. And that takes courage. Most of us support our pre-existing beliefs. Most of us embrace anything that resonates with our existing point of view. Everything doesn't have to click, doesn't have to fit. Because for that to happen, you have to be very eclectic. You have to go look around and say, oh, that must be true because I believe that already. That must be true. That's the kind of person I want to be around because I like people like that. I don't want to have a sheikh that confronts me. I want to have a sheikh that just tells me everything I'm doing is right, even if you get to that degree, which few people do. Everything doesn't have to click in the moment. So another way of saying that is that the westernized mentality has a lot of control issues. Now you can say that because of the history and the social and political history of many Eastern countries and colonialism and all of those excuses, people were degraded to such a degree that they don't have control issues, that they just were submissive. But you know who the most submissive people are? They're here in the West. They're not in the East. Truly. Because under this guise of knowledge, under the guise of independence, under the guise of freedom, people are like little sheep being told to go this way and that way and that way. And then, of course, there are those voices and those pundits and the media and everything who point out, well, this happened here, and how do you explain this? And how come that the African-American man didn't get the same treatment for his Ebola that the white person got? And, you know, and what's happening in Ferguson and in Missouri? And how come the percentage of black people in the prison so outnumbers the white people? And why is there 22% of the white people are on food stamps and 36% of the African Americans are? I mean, all of that undertone is in our society. And the point here is that we have to understand that the Westerner looks often for what doesn't fit and discards it. And what doesn't fit is another way of saying is, if I don't like it, if it doesn't feel right, if it goes against my preferences, if I'm uncomfortable, discard that. Discard it. Where the Oriental mentality, the Eastern mentality is to try to understand why and what. And that's why the philosophies have been developed. That's why such deep, profound understanding has been searched for. That's why the nuances in the languages are so incredible that I don't think anybody in the world today, even the most erudite Arabic scholar or Persian scholar, will stop ever learning something new. There's always something new to see. There's always something new to grasp by the subtleties. And our path is the path of subtleties, supposedly. So it's the desire to remain in control, or at least the choice to have over what you or believe or you don't believe. It points out that there's a lot of misconceived notions and attempts to protect our own beliefs, or to be, to be seen to be the most intelligent, the most accomplished, the most spiritual, the most well-informed individual. But that's not the attitude of the great Shuyuk. They were humble people. They were grateful people. They went long distances under great strain, whether to meet others, to meet their teachers, their guides, to sit in seclusion. They didn't have these grandiose ideas of ruling the world. They didn't have grandiose ideas of what spirituality were. They were humble people. Read them. Listen to what Mahdi Naqshband Rahmatullah alayhi said. Read Ibn Attallah Iskandari Rahmatullah alayhi. Read Ibn Mashish Rahmatullah alayhi. Read them and understand how humble these human beings were, that they put their questions right out there and they invite response to them. Who among the Western mentality has that kind of courage today and that kind of transparency? Yes, I know it doesn't seem to be about Khidmat, but it is about Khidmat, because we have to talk about society and we have to talk about the people we serve. And I'm going to talk about social work, what it is this weekend, in honor of Fatima. Truly, it's very, very important. We are indoctrinated by the systems that we create. And contemplate that. Look at the technology, look at the video, the television system, look at the news systems, look at the institutions, the media institutions. We are constantly in this cyclical process of indoctrinating and re-indoctrinating ourselves and habituating ourselves, whether it's to this instrument here, the cell phone and all that it allows us to do, or whether it's a television set or even NPR, whatever it is. We get into this habitual pattern of re-indoctrination. And unless we take time away from that, we can't measure to the degree we are being indoctrinated. There's no measurement and evaluation of its effect on us. It causes mental instability, it causes physical illness, But I don't want to be one of those people who say, media is bad and it's going to make you sick, therefore don't watch television. It's such a simplistic point of view. And it's an unrealistic point of view. It's not going to go away. The Pandora's box has been opened. So how are we going to deal with it? The only place to deal with it is in ourselves, in our personal commitment. Looking inward, not outward. The results of looking inward are many, one of which is serving others. And remember what I said weeks ago, and a week ago, and 2 weeks ago, and 3 weeks ago. It's all a form of dhikrullah. All of it. Even our errors become a form of dhikrullah. But it has to come from within us. And so we have the outer forms of prayer and fasting and wudu and the pillars of Islam. And we have the inner processes of the meditation and muraqabah. But it is all to be blended, to come to that point, to that moment, those moments in every day where you can look left or right, you can look east or west, and there is the countenance of Allah. You're in a dhikr, you're in remembrance. And remember that old linguistics of that word dhikr. I think it was in Lane or some more obscure text that I found, that the dhikr also had the implication of penetration, to penetrate. So, what is spiritual is misunderstood often. What a really dedicated human being is, well, it's hard to define. In other places in the world, at other times, the least known person was the most important. Not the most known. Not the 150 signatures that went on to the letter to Baghdadi, whatever his name is, his other name, his real name. No, those are not necessarily the most important people. The most important people may be the Abdals, the Aftabs, the Qutb. May be the most important people, the unseen people. And then we have to look at the result. Whether we look at Sufism, we look at Sunniism, we look at Shiism, or we look at, I don't care what ism you look at. In the world we live in today, the product is a result of conditioning more than it is of faith. Because if it was faith, the product would not look like what we're seeing today. If it was really man, it just wouldn't look like this. What we're seeing is the worst lemon produced by General Motors. It looks like a car, it acts like a car, it's fueled by like a car, but it's the worst car on the road. I remember when I was a young man in the 1950s, my father bought a DeSoto. Ho-ho! That car never worked right from the day he got it. I can still see it. It was that crazy powder blue and white DeSoto. It was a lemon, we called it, right? A lemon. Never worked right. But it was a car. Well, the Islam we're seeing today, the Christianity we see today, the Judaism today is a lemon. Now, some of you like lemons to eat, but I don't think you want to drive a lemon. And you don't want to be part of a lemon. And so we have to understand that we are being influenced. And I'm sitting here and I'm talking and I'm influencing you. And you have to decide whether the influence is based on truth. You have to try to understand what my intention is. Where do I come from? What is my silsila? What did my sheikh give to me? Who sheikh gave to him? Who sheikh gave to him? What is my goal in all of this 40 years of this talking? What do I want from it? This is my khidmah on a daily basis. And I am the most imperfect. Just think what a good, perfect being would be like. So we're being engineered. Our brains are being engineered. The common denominator between the sort of Western seeker and the Eastern seeker is that both are seekers. Huh? Both are seekers. The common denominator between the Western seeker who wants to be under the guidance of a teacher and the one who wants to be under the guidance of themselves, right? Or a panoply of quote-unquote teachers, which is really another way of saying under the influence of myself, because I want to choose this and choose that and choose this and choose that, is that both are obsessed by certainty. The first one seeks certainty, and the second one seeks to retain that certainty. That is to say, the first one who wants to seek through a master seeks to be yaqeen, the different levels of yaqeen, of certainty. The second one, who wants to be in control of themselves, wants to retain the certainty that they already have. They don't want to let go. Can both do service? Yes. Certainly they can. Is the service going to be beneficial to the recipient? Undoubtedly it can be. But will it be beneficial to the one who's giving the service, which is the purpose of the khidmah? Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the world the way it was created? No. There will be no benefit. Or little benefit. And so what is the attitude of a real seeker is the real seeker doesn't make preconditions. Only those can learn who will learn what is there to learn, who want to learn, and who accept the method of learning. Remember the old saying, you have to learn how to learn? First you have to unlearn, then you have to learn how to learn, then you can learn. I think it's something that Idris Shah used to say a lot. First you have to unlearn, then you have to learn how to learn, and then you'll learn. You can't demand knowledge. Well, I guess you can demand it, but it's not the way you're going to gain it. You can seek out knowledge, and even more than that, you have to be willing to say that it should not have to come in a familiar form. It should come in the form in which it's been given and which it's been designed to. And so these are some of the thoughts, that I had on the subject, on this subject, and there are more. There are more, but we can discuss that tonight if you like. We can discuss them in a more relaxed environment. But if we want to accept as Westerners or Westernized Easterners elements of our approach to knowledge, then we should at least limit ourselves, or we should at least question our approach, how narrow our approach is. And that things don't have to fit our categories. Imam al-Ghazali, 7 centuries ago, was it? About 7 centuries ago? Almost a millennium ago, said, "What is today called conditioning is what used to be called habit patterns based on lower objectives." Hey, I'm going to give you something. Did you get it? Did you make it up? Did I send you an email? Did you not get it? I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you something about Imam al-Ghazali's life. I think they're interesting. Just a little short thing. The Sufi method has never been to disturb these patterns, but rather to supply or make possible the development of a superior consciousness which would be able to perceive the habit and regulate its value. Once a person can really experience the value, the relevance of a conditioned form of behavior or thought, he or she will inevitably modify it. That's a really important statement. Once you can perceive your pattern, you'll be willing to modify it. You can't modify it unless you're willing to see it. It's what we call polishing the heart, or polishing the mirror. So, one sheikh gave an example. If you have a sneer on your face, eventually it becomes your habit. You know? And you no longer know about it. You no longer think about it. So therefore, you don't know how to remove it because you're not even aware of it anymore. And all of a sudden, someone puts up a mirror to you. And you see what a scowl you have on your face. And they just put up a mirror in this moment when you're upset about something, but they surprise you anytime. That person's called a sheikh, right? Puts up this mirror in front of you, at 2 o'clock at night, or not 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sometime with this day, that day, all of a sudden, you say, hey, the last time I looked at myself, I had a scowl on my face. Now I have a scowl on my face. Now I have a sneer on my face. Nah. And slowly, it does its work. Slowly, coupled with other things that you see in the mirror, coupled with other things that you feel, you begin to ask yourself, why? Remember that Eastern question? Why? How did this happen? When did I change? I used to be a happy child. I used to be this. I used to be that. That's just for the person with the sneer on their face. Then there's a person of arrogance. And then there's a person of whatever. Pick one. So those people who seek a spiritual path, many years ago, we used to seek the path of enlightenment, enlightenment. We didn't ask whether or not we were qualified for that path. We didn't seek the path of enlightenment. Yogananda, what was it called? What was this called? Huh?
Self-realization.
Self-realization, the self-realization. But how many misconceptions did we have about that and what it would take? And what are we willing to eliminate in our life? What veils are we ready to rend in order to do that? And how do you do that? How do you do it? And I will tell you, I will always say meditation, right? I'm always going to say that. But I also know that you're going to do 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or every other day or every third day or 3 times. But there's so many things. And one of the things that will penetrate those veils is remembrance through Khidmat, through service. Not institutionalizing service. That's fine. There are service organizations. Legacy is a service organization. It's a global service organization. But that if we have a program in Indonesia, and we have a program in Libya, and we have a program in Algeria, and we have a program in Morocco, and we have a program here and there, do you know that we're not just doing the service then? It's being done every day. Every single day in the planning, up the hill, as people walk to work, and as people come back from work, and as they answer emails, and they hear what's happening, and the fact that we lost 2 volunteers in Libya, their lives were taken by these extremists, and all of that. It's always happening. And unless you put yourself in that kind of a situation where your wakeful day is dhikr in the form of khidmah, in the form of self-muhasabah, in the form of mushahada, in the form of mujahada, you're not going to get it. It's all going to be a sidelight. It's all a pastime. It's a really important pastime. It's a spiritual pastime. It's a religious pastime. And look, here in the Quran, it says that's what I should be doing. And yes, that's what we should be doing. It's not an either-or situation. It's not black and white. But how are we conditioning ourselves for the good, for the righteousness? And so what's good is when you set out on the path, and what's not so good is when you imagine that you can make the rules. When you set out on the path, that's the most laudable thing you can do. That's what we were created to do. Ser Allah, ser fillah, ser ma'allah, adaniyat, adaniyat. That's the most laudable thing. But the most reprehensible thing is when you think that you can make the rules, that you can do it your way. And that's the very westernized mentality. And the westernized mentality, by the way, is well represented in the East. The world is globalized. All the TV shows, all the news shows, all the ideas of what is freedom and what is not freedom, all of the materialistic mentality, and indeed on top of that the military-industrial complexes that exist, and all the global economic systems and all of that has westernized the Eastern mentality too. But when you get down to the core, at the core is you know you can't make the rules. And that doesn't bother you. That's fine. I don't want to make rules that if they're wrong, they're going to take me in the wrong direction. And so what you see is the Erzat Sufism, Erzat Islam, Erzat Sunni, Erzat Shia, whatever it is, it's all Erzats. It's false, it's an imitation. It's all an imitation, not all, but a great, what you see, what's being represented most of all is an imitation. And here you sit. But the imitators give themselves away. They always give themselves away. You can always tell the imitator. They will never apologize. They will never seek forgiveness. They will never be humbled. They will never, ever admit wrong. They will wrap themselves in the flag if it's a political imitation. They'll wrap themselves in the Quran if it's spiritual imitation, or the Bible. They'll build big buildings like you saw coming in on 29 tonight if you came from Washington, the Liberty University. 90,000 students. Always 4 or 5 buildings going on at the same time. Yeah, 30,000 here and 60,000 online. Always new buildings. They wrap themselves in the materiality. And the quality of the education, not good. Why? You can always tell the imitators because they will not have humility and they will not have gratitude. Their prayers will be, thank you, O Allah, for giving us money. Not thank you, O Allah, for the little that you give us that we are undeserving of. If you give us something, we'll use it for the sake of serving you, serving the people that you create. And even, I must say, they'll use the right words. So how do you know? You know from in here. And how do you know from in here? You have to do the practices that make you know from in here. And if you don't do it, why would you ever expect that you're going to have that sensitivity? You think it's in your head? You think it's in your intellect? Forget about it. Why would the Prophet ﷺ say what he said, seek out knowledge from the cradle to the grave? Because there's no end to it. The people who see the truth are really the ones who claim that they see it. The people of enlightenment are really the ones who sell enlightenment. Rarely. It's just another primitive religion. Running scared. The thing that makes animists in the jungles of New Guinea or the Amazon, that dominates their life. Do you know what dominates their life? Fear. That's what dominates their life. Fear. Because everything is symbol. The snake means this. The newcomer means that. The disease was caused by this black magic. The the fruit not ripening on the vine is a sign that the gods are discontent with us. It's all symbolic. You think that religion today is much less than that? Primitive way of looking at things? So my dears, I love you. This is a strange way to start, I understand. A strange way to start. And I could go on for another half an hour taking it back to service in another way. But let me just say, let me take it to this way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, He says, O people of Islam, you are the best people ever raised for the good of mankind. Pause. Let's be honest. Who's he talking to? Anybody? Who do you know today? You are the best people ever raised for the good of mankind because you have been raised to serve others. You enjoin what is good and forbid evil and believe in Allah. And from that, and from other statements like in Surah Baqarah where Allah says, and do not forget to do good to one another. That and many other quotations should remind us this weekend of what the truth really is. And how much are we ready to dedicate? As a sheikh, I want my students to sit in muraqabah, you know that. And you always feel bad if you say, well, I'm not sitting enough, sheikh, and all of that. And that's okay, it's all right, I understand. But there are so many ways, so many benefits, that if you organize your life properly, it will be a continuing string of dhikr Allah. And after all, that's what we're told is the ultimate goal, is to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember me and I will remember you. Of course that's what I want. I want my children to be happy. I want them to be pious people. I want them to do good in the world. I want everybody here to have health and well-being. I want Allah to give me more life only as long as I can continue to serve. I want. But I think that all those wants, if they're framed properly, are fine. Of course I want you to do those things, because I know the benefit of it. And you can't always replace one with the other. You can't replace meditation just with service. You can't replace service with knowledge. You can't replace knowledge with meditation only. They all work together. And if there's one leg missing of the stool, guess what? The stool is unstable. So please understand where I'm coming from when I'm driving you a little crazy. And understand where your guilt is coming from if you feel guilty because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. That's a very Western idea. I'm assuming that you want in the core of your heart to balance your lives. I'm assuming that you want to take the tools and really use them. That you need to juxtapose your life. You need, at each stage in your life, you need to really take another look and say, what's in the forefront and what's in the background? What's in the foreground and what's in the background? What should I be concentrating on now in my 30s to 40s as opposed to my 60s to 70s or 70s to 80s or 90s? And how am I going to do that? Because if you don't trust that Allah will show you the way, then what's the point? We have examples right here in this room. I use Abu Hassan example many times. What he has done to be able to stay in this community and work and travel back and forth, he worked for Booz Allen Hamilton up in Washington and traveled back and forth every few days to do that. Then he worked in Charlottesville and spent one night or 2 nights a week in Charlottesville and came home every weekend. What are we willing to do for the teaching? Because Allah, now look, he has a wife and a beautiful son, alhamdulillah, who stood yesterday and was reciting, that little thing was reciting Quran yesterday, that he picked up Where's he going to pick that up? In public school? Going to pick it up on the street somewhere? Where's he going to pick that up? Does he have to sit in a class, in an Islamic school classroom to learn that? He learned it just standing next to his father and mother and being brought to the masjid. So it's like he's Easternized. Well, yes, he's Indonesian, but he's Easternized in his heart. He's absorbing. So many examples are here. So, my dear, let's remember that we have to have gratitude. Remember that the Prophet ﷺ said, one who is not grateful to mankind is not grateful to Allah. So we have each other. We have each other to serve and each other to love. And we have been sent the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as a mercy for who? For the Muslims? Is that what it says in the surah? And we have sent thee not but as a blessing for the entire universe, for all people. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.